First thing, Butch, tell me your name and where you live now.
Yep, my name is Butch Mazzuca, and I live in Vail, Colorado.
What was your MOS and what was your rank?
I left the Marines as a first lieutenant. My MOS was 7562. I was a 46 driver.
Okay. When did you enlist in the Corps?
I went through PLC, so I went through quote-unquote OCS between my junior and senior year of college. So that would have been 66. And I started active duty in 67.
What did your family think about you joining?
My family had an interesting reaction to my joining. They wanted me to go with Army ROTC. And when I told them I went into Marines, my dad just rolled his eyes. My mother made the sign of the cross.
Were you a jock in school?
Say again?
Were you a jock in school, a scholar, a geek? What were you?
You ever seen the movie, as far as what I was in school, have you ever seen the movie The Animal House?
Yeah.
Okay.
What MOS slots did you enlist in order of preference unless you just picked private?
Now, as far as MOSs, I only had one in mind. I was either going to fly or I wasn't going in.
What was your favorite song during the war?
My favorite song during the war was probably Oh Marble, It's a Hell of a Place. But as far as songs that made the top 40, it was We Gotta Get Out of This Place. And I bet you've heard that before. Yeah.
How long were you active duty?
4 years. I'm sorry. I was on active duty for 4 years.
Did you ever do the reserves?
No, I never did any reserve duty. I was medevaced out, and I was discharged from the Corps from there.
What were your favorite bars around the base?
As far as bars around the base, I never left the base. I went to the O Club, and that was about it. I figured I was getting shot at enough when I was out flying around.
What are your best R&R memories?
My best R&R memories, I met my to-be wife over in Hawaii. And going from Vietnam to Hawaii was just unbelievable. The only bad part about that was going back from Hawaii to Da Nang. I remember getting back to Da Nang. I left Hawaii, it was about 78 degrees, and I landed at night in Da Nang, and it must have been 101 with 98% humidity. And I just said, oh no, I'm back.
What did it feel like the first time you stepped off the plane in country?
The first time I stepped off a plane in country, it was the first time, within about 15, 20 minutes, I heard some 50 cal fire. And it was the first time that I had ever heard live fire. I was 23 years old. And I was spooked. And I remember thinking to myself, this is it. You're here for a year or whatever, and you're not going back. For a while.
What did it feel like the first time you were allowed to solo?
First time I was allowed to solo in flight school? Do I have time to relate this?
Make sure it's a full sentence.
All right. The first time I soloed, one of the things that I wanted to do in the airplane, I went through Navy flight school, so I was flying a T-34. I wanted to smoke a cigarette in an airplane. Don't ask me why. I just wanted to smoke a cigarette. And I was so intent on smoking a cigarette that after I got airborne, I forgot to raise my gear. And I was flying around, and I can't tell you how many other instructors flew up next to me, and they're doing this. I have no idea what they were doing. I'm cool. You know, I have 20 hours in the airplane, and I'm cool. I couldn't get the airplane to fly over 115 knots, and I could not figure out what was wrong with it. But in the meantime, so I put out my cigarette, and I figured, well, maybe I just have a bad airplane. So I flew around for the hour, whatever I was doing. I came back, and I remember the tower called me up. And I forgot exactly how it was phrased. This was a long time ago. And someone came out up and said, we would tell you to lower your gear, but they're already lowered. Anyway, we always have a wedding down party afterwards. And when I got back from my solo, there was no way I was going to put on the silk scarf. It was a little bit of an embarrassing moment.
What was it like the first time you soloed in a helicopter?
First time I soloed in a helicopter was a hoot. I loved fixed wing, and then after I got into helicopters, I remember my first flight in a helicopter, my instructor looked at me like, how did this guy get through carrier qualifications and all this stuff? I couldn't fly it. I could not fly a helicopter. About the 9th hop, and I think it was the 10th hop was our solo, about the 9th hop, I remember flying, and my instructor looked at me and he just said, did you take a pill? I mean, it just came to me. It just came. And it was 2 days later that I did my first solo, and I was absolutely on top of the world. I fell in love. It was like seeing Farrah Fawcett for the first time.
Was she your favorite girl at that time?
Yep. Farrah Fawcett was definitely my favorite girl at that time. Because she was Farrah Fawcett. Because she had about 8,000 teeth. She had this big smile. I don't know if you remember, but she used to do those commercials. But she was my dream girl.
Tell me about some of the best of times.
The best of times in Vietnam, that's an interesting question. The first reunion I went back to was 5 years ago. And one of my squadron mates brought a diary that he kept, and he was reading from it. And I remembered nothing of it. I don't remember getting shot at. Vaguely remember getting shot down. When I did get shot down, I have no recollection of how I got out. My recollections of Vietnam were all positive. I remember the camaraderie and the relationships that I built with these guys, and what you're seeing here, those were absolutely the best of times. I've seen guys tonight that I have not seen in 39 years, and it was like yesterday. And 5 years ago, when I went to the first reunion, and I saw my commanding officer and some of the guys that are here tonight, it was the same thing. It took about 10 minutes, and we were back in Marble Mountain.
Tell me about Marble Mountain.
Marble Mountain was a hell of a place, and that was the song I was talking about. But Marble Mountain Air Facility was in the basic Da Nang area, but we were on the ocean, so really we had it pretty good. Because where we were, we had the cool breezes. It could be 110 degrees inland, and maybe it was only 90 degrees at Marble. It was really a good base to be stationed at. It was also nice, too, because when the bad guys would launch their rockets and mortars, a lot of them couldn't reach us. They used to reach the other side of the runway. So of all the bases that I was at in Vietnam, I liked Marble the best. I thought our food was great over there. As much as a base in a war zone can be a good place to be, I thought Marble was a good spot.
Tell me something about some of the worst of times.
The worst of time was when I got shot down, and that was scary. As I said, I have no recollection of how we got out. If you want to hear the story itself, we were told there was 3 or 4 birds shot down in a canyon, and one bird had been shot down. The second bird went to go get it, it was shot down. A third bird went in, it was shot down. A fourth bird went in, it was shot down. So we had to go in and get all the crews out. We were told that it was a sniper. We were told it was one sniper. We went in and we had 2 46s. We had a couple of Cobras on either side of us. And as I recall, I think the Navy ran in a couple of flights of A4s, and they were dropping some nape. And I was flying with a major, I'm not going to mention his name, but he was a former jet pilot. He was a former fighter pilot. And let's just say that I was flying his co-pilot because I had gone out of country for 30 days. When you go out of country for 30 days, you can't fly first seat. So I had to fly second seat. I was his co-pilot. And let's just say that he flew an approach that I would not have flown. I used to come in 1,500 feet above the zone, just turn the bird on its side and spiral right down. He came in 70 knots, straight in, like we were flying into Langley. We started taking fire. One of our gunners and I yelled out that we were taking fire from the starboard side, and he's firing. And we were over a river. I forgot what river it was, but we're taking fire from the starboard side, and then all of a sudden we're taking fire from the port side. And next thing, we're taking fire directly in front of us, and our gauges are popping out. So there's glass shattering in the cockpit, and bullets are coming through the cockpit. And I'm thinking to myself, this has got to be a pretty good sniper. If he's shooting at us from this side, swimming across the river, shooting at from this side, and then, make a long story short, that we just made it over a ridge. We kind of did a crash landing in an area called the tennis courts, and it was called that because that's what it looked like from the air. The last thing I remember about it was, number one, we never got in because we were so shut up. Is we crash landed and we had some secret stuff on the bird. We were doing some new, we had some decoding devices, and we had called back, and they had said, make sure you pitch the stuff. And if you're not, if someone doesn't come to get you by darkness, go into the bush. And I'm thinking to myself, there's no way in the world I want to go humping into the bush with the bad guys all around. That was my last recollection. I remember I had my camera with me and we were fooling around. And I took my camera and I was taking pictures. And I don't know if you know much about photography, but you can see things in black and white photograph that you can't in color photographs. However we got out, we got out. I don't know if some birds came in and got us, or some Marines came in and rescued us. As it turned out, by the way, there was a whole battalion of North Vietnamese in there. Anyway, about 2 weeks after the fact, a Navy commander visited me from headquarters in Da Nang. And he said, are these your photographs? And I figured I had done something wrong, because I was taking pictures of the base from the air. Anyway, he said, you reckon? I said, yes, they are. In the photographs, you could see the outline of North Vietnamese helmets and 50 caliber machine guns trained on us, and they weren't more than 20 yards away from us. We were completely surrounded by bad guys. They did not capture us, obviously. They did not kill us, and they could have. The only thing that we could figure out at the time is we had crash landed on a hospital or a supply depot, and it was more important for the North Vietnamese to keep that a secret than to shoot or capture us. That was, in my opinion, the worst of times. I flew a mission with my commanding officer, who he will say that it's probably the worst, which maybe was the worst mission I ever flew, but I'll be candid with you, I don't have any recollection of it. My recollections of Vietnam are of my buddies and drinking, and I have mostly positive memories of Vietnam.
What was it like an R&R, and where did you go?
I had 2 R&Rs. I did one to, an R&R, I went to Hawaii, where I met my fiance, and I know this sounds morbid, but a lot of times guys would have R&Rs and then they would get killed. So you had the orders, and they would, anyway, they wound up with S1 and they would hand them out to the various squadrons. So my second R&R I took to Bangkok. And Bangkok, for a 24-year-old coming out of a war zone, was fun. And I'm not going to go beyond that.
Tell me about the last reunion.
The last reunion, and it was the first time I'd seen, the last reunion I attended was up in Kennebunkport, and there was just a few of us. I've never gone back to a big squadron reunion. And I'm trying to think, Duncan was there, our commanding officer. There was only about 4 or 5 of us. And as I said, within minutes of seeing each other, it was like we were back together again. And when you think about it, I mean, I have some close friends that I worked with. I have some close friends from college. And some of these guys, because we all didn't go over there together, we'd go over, the other guys would come in later. So it's not like we were together even for a year. A lot of times we're with these guys for 8, 9, 10 months, sometimes even 4 and 5 months. But those bonds last. One of the guys here, his name is Don Zeller. Don got into country in May. I left country in August. And my recollection, Don and I formed a bond. And we saw each other over at the hotel about 3 hours ago. It was like yesterday, except he's fatter.
What do you remember about this Medal of Honor situation? Anything?
I don't. And remember before I was telling you that I had to fly co-pilot? My father had a heart attack. So I went home on emergency leave. When I was home on emergency leave is when the skipper and Paul Parker rescued all those guys from the minefield. And I think I got back about a week later. And as I said, if you're out of country for 30 days, and I was on emergency leave for 30 days, you have to fly co-pilot 2 missions before you can fly in the first seat again. The first one, I think it was a test flight, and the second one was when I got shot down.
Anything else you want to add? Any other stories or anything?
No. No stories per se. I can only tell you that I'm very proud of my service over there. I'm more proud of these guys over here, and I am damn proud to have been a U.S. Marine.
What did you feel like when you got home?
Well, when I got home, I was sent to the hospital. I was at Great Lakes. I got goosebumps when we landed. But again, I didn't come back in a big United plane like a lot of guys did. I was in an Air Force transport. But I remember getting off the airplane and getting down, and I kissed the tarmac. It felt very good to be home. Not a lot. I mean, I think you've spoken to a lot of the guys here. I appreciate what you folks are doing, and I hope this goes somewhere.